we have after that is the carrier. So this is the caliper, and this is the carrier, right? So now in order to get the brake pads out, you see the brake pads just ride in that carrier, right? So the brake pads come out, but since we're taking the rotor off too, we actually have to remove the carrier so we can get the rotor to slide off. Right?
Okay. Question, so in terms of looking at the brake pads, like how should they look? Like that's obviously a worn brake pad. How do they normally look when it's you know, a fresh brake pad versus that, so that we can see what the wear looks like?
Good question. Let's break up.
Okay.
Alright, so this is the, you ready?
Yeah.
This is the new set of brake pads, right? And so when we break this open, you'll get a chance to see compare what the new ones look like to the old ones, right? They come in pairs, so when you buy brake pads, you get both pairs for the front, right? So now this is the new one, and this is the old one. And you can see the difference in the level of thickness. This is your brake pad right here, and that's what you need in order to be able to stop. And this is almost gone, right? And this is about the point where you start to hear that squealing sound, maybe.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's something. So that's what that sound is. Alright, so, let's see, that might be the same. I'm going to step up to a 19 millimeter.
So in terms of your tool set, what kind of tools do you need for a job like this, and what kind of tools do you think are generally needed for like the basic repairs that you're going to do on your vehicle?
Okay, you need a good socket set. If you drive a foreign car, you're going to need a metric socket set. If you drive an American car, generally, you're going to need a standard American socket set. So it's going to be measured in inches instead of millimeters. But a lot of you know, domestic cars are made foreign places, so you're going to find they have, you know, metric parts on them. Okay. So that's just the way that is. But you need a good socket set. And if you'll notice, the difference between these two socket handles, right? So this one is a 1/2 inch, and this one is a 3/4 inch drive. And so the sockets that fit this one obviously aren't going to fit this one. But if you need to remove something heavy, something that's going to be really difficult, you want to get the beefier wrench. Okay, so you need a good socket set. It's good to have a good set of wrenches, box wrenches, the box end and the open end. Like I said, jack stands, a good floor jack, something to lay on, and you know, let's see. Yeah, you need a good set of screwdrivers. You know, so you need a good set of screwdrivers, and sometimes you might need a screwdriver that's, you know, smaller than the one you have. So you need a medium-sized screwdriver. Sometimes you need a heavy screwdriver, you know, to muscle something off. You might need a heavy screwdriver, like that, right? Okay. So sometimes you need a big screwdriver for different things. All right, so a good set of screwdrivers, a good set of box wrenches. Sometimes it's good to have needle nose pliers, right? And these just so happen to be the locking variety, which is good sometimes. Especially if you're working by yourself, you need something that will lock, you know what I'm saying, so you don't have to hold it. And likewise, sometimes you need a pair of pliers, a good heavy hammer, you know, and you might actually need a rubber mallet sometimes too. Just looking at some of the things I have in here. These are lineman's pliers, and they're good for cutting wire. And they're also good for like twisting things, like if I want to twist some wire. They're called lineman pliers. They're pretty heavy duty, and they come in handy for certain things. Let's see. I mean, I have some other things in here that I don't use as often, but for the most part, it's good to have, you know, like I said, a good hammer, maybe a mallet, a good set of screwdrivers, a good set of sockets, some locking pliers. You see, I got a couple different size locking pliers like that, because they come in handy for different things. I also have a large set in here somewhere. It's good if you got some place where you can keep your tools organized. Me, I'm usually on the road, so I'm just throwing them in this bag and rolling. And you'll find once you have a good set of tools, and you might have people who come and borrow them, and then your set becomes less complete. So that happens sometimes too. So now I'm gonna step up to a 19 millimeter and take off this carrier. It's righty tight, lefty loose.
I'm sorry, what'd you just say?
Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Right. So sometimes when you're working on a car, you have to remind yourself which way is right and which way is left, because it's actually the opposite of what I would be thinking, because the screw's on the back inside. So I'm trying to go this way. So I'm gonna pull. This is a product. Let me see if I can find it. It's a product on the market. It's used for applications like this. It's called Loctite. It probably has a couple different trade names, but it's basically a thread locker. You put it on the threads of something like this, and actually you can see where it was used. See that blue stuff on there? It's called thread locker, and it actually fills in the spaces in the threads when you screw something down, and just keeps it in place. So these bolts won't wiggle back out. I'm gonna grab some, clean these bolts up before I put them back on. We talked about taking off the cap to the brake fluid reservoir. And the reason why we wanted to do that, because now what we're going to do is use a clamp to press these pistons back. The pistons automatically come out as the brake pads wear down. So now that we're putting on full-size brake pads with all the meat on them, we need to push these pistons back so that it'll fit around the brake pads again. Right, so what we do in that situation is we just use one brake pad, and we use a clamp like this. Open that up a little bit more. Use a clamp like this to put them between the caliper and the brake pad. So I'm using the back of the caliper and the front of the brake pad, and I'm just going to tighten that down. Tighten that down to push those pistons back. And you got a dual piston. This car has a dual piston. They got two pistons. Some vehicles will just have one piston right in the middle. But it's the same process. We'll just slowly crank that down. And when we do the same thing on the other side, what we might find when we look at the brake fluid reservoir again is that it's full and we don't need to add any brake fluid.
Okay.
You never want to let your brake fluid reservoir go dry, because then that introduces air into the system.
And what kind of problems could that cause?
Well, then you won't have brakes. If you got air in the line that's supposed to just have brake fluid in it, then your brakes will be real soft and smushy, and you might not stop when you need to. Same size, a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is a 17. Videotaping.
Say peace. Say hey.
Say hi. Okay, so upon further inspection, we decided not to resurface the brake rotor. It looks pretty smooth on both sides and doesn't look like it's going to have any problems. It's not really rusty.
And what was the sign that it didn't need it? Like, what were you saying in terms of the smoothness of it?
Well, if you look at this surface right here, which is the surface that the brake pad is going to make contact with, it needs to be smooth, right? Sometimes what you'll have is you'll have grooves in a brake pad, and you'll end up with grooves in this rotor right here. And then when you try to put a new brake pad on it, it's not really meeting face to face like that, because the rotor has grooves in it. And so if it does have grooves in it, you either want to replace it or get it resurfaced if you can. But ultimately you want to have a flat surface against a flat surface so you get the maximum braking power. So what we're going to do now, you can see on the back, I've already replaced the brake pad on the back, but also what came in the kit with the brake pads is these little riders right here, which help to hold the brake pads in place. And so we got a new set of riders in on the carrier. We'll go ahead and slide the brake pads in, and you can see these little feet fit right in here. So you slide that foot in and then fit the top part in, and do the same thing for the other side. Sometimes it was always helpful to take a look at your old brake pads because sometimes there's a difference between the inside and the outside. These just happen to be pretty much identical. You'll notice there's a difference right here. That has like a little half moon shape, and this has a round shape, right? But then also, if you turn them this way, this one kind of has a half moon shape and a round shape too. So I think they're actually the same, but sometimes you'll find that the inside and the outside are different. And so it's important to, just keep those old brake pads as a reference, and you can usually tell which one is on the inside because it's going to have the indentation from the piston, which is also on the inside. So that being the case, we replaced the brake pads. We're not going to replace the rotor. We already pushed back the pistons inside the caliper, so we're going to go ahead and put that in place right there like that, and then we'll find the two bolts that hold it together. These don't have any Loctite on them, and I'm not going to put Loctite on them because they don't have Loctite on them, and I don't want to make it too difficult to get these back out next time. Just throw it back together the same way it came apart. And when you're putting things back together, ideally you have a torque wrench, and I have one, and you want to check and make sure that the bolts are tightened down to a specific amount of pressure, and that's what a torque wrench will do for you. So after I get these bolts on here hand tight or tight with the wrench, I'm just going to check them with the torque wrench. So now this was 17 millimeter. Take those down. Another hint that's helpful when doing brake jobs, you got two sides of the car and they're going to be identical. So you always want to do one side at a time. That way if you forget what it's supposed to look like, or if you need a reference, you can always go look at the other side. You can see my reflection in the car.
It is funny. Wow, this is big. This whole space is big.
It is big, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the wheels on this car are bigger than the ones on my car.
Are you sure?
I think so. One thing I want to show you is a breaker bar. So this is kind of like a socket, except it doesn't have that ratcheting motion to it, and it's really just used for breaking. It's a breaker bar. It's used for breaking loose nuts or tight nuts, breaking them loose. So I'm going to use that here to actually tighten these nuts. Yeah, Al was with me. He was feeling a little under the weather, but he came to keep me company anyway.
Word.
And
oh, what was the stew? Did you try the stew?
That's what I was just getting ready to mention. I let him eat the stew.
Oh man.
He was feeling ill. He was like, "Man, this is good." I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask your brother to hook me up because I missed it on this one."
Word.
It was love. It was love. He got the stew he needed.
Word.
He said it was great.
Yeah, that's one of my dishes, yo. That's my ital rundown.
Is that right?
Word.
That's what it is. Okay, so this is it. That's what it looks like when it's put back together. We can pop that wheel back on and keep it moving over to the other side. I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put this wheel back on so that it'll be back on. I feel more comfortable with the wheel back on.
Cool.
Finish on this side. Just to sum this up, you can see we got everything back assembled again. New brake pads on both sides. What we'll need to do once we get everything put back together is just pump the brakes a couple of times to get everything cinched back up because it's still kind of loose in there. But just want to say, everybody be safe as you try this. If you decide to try it, of course I have to be held not responsible for anything that might happen while you're trying this. And if you feel any way uncomfortable, you either give me a call, 919-923-9496, and I can do it for you, or contact your local mechanic if you feel any way uncomfortable about it at all. But this is how it's done, and I hope you enjoy watching. Bless up.